Tonight, the Archetypal Man Podcast answers the question,
what the hell was with the alien titty milk scene?
Welcome to the Archetypal Man Podcast. I'm co-host Apollo.
And I am co-host Aries.
This is an emergency edition of the Archetypal Man Podcast because I saw something so horrifying about The Last Jedi. It popped into my head when listening to somebody else that we just had to do the premeditated murder of Luke Skywalker.
Absolutely. And before you get deep in, I just wanted to say something. When you and I went to go see the movie at the theater, it was strange. When that scene came up, it was like a signpost. Okay, it felt significant.
Right?
It was very strange. It was an awkward scene. It was totally unnecessary, but it felt like Rian Johnson, just grabbed me by my scrotum and said, "Hey, get a load of this."
Yank!
Yeah. So it was really, really weird, and I was left after that scene. Was just scratching my head, and then I'm like, "What in the hell was that?" And I feel, yeah.
For me, the yank took me 6 months to get over. When you get yanked and or kicked in the balls, there's a moment of shock.
Absolutely.
It was 6 months of shock for me to really get what happened.
It was healing too, in a way, because the internet ever since that has been just on fire with people begging the question. There's always been pretty detailed commentary on what the movie's like and how they hated it or how they loved it or whatever, but almost everybody adds a PS at the end saying, "P.S. What the hell was with the alien titty milk scene with Luke Skywalker?"
Oh, that's a great point. Because subconsciously, even the most crazy, progressive, egalitarian people know that it's just wrong to have the archetypal hero drinking milk.
Made no sense.
From a bottle.
From a bottle. Yeah. So, we had to get this emergency podcast response out there so that we can get some answers to the fans, because they deserve to know what is being done with possibly the most archetypally significant character in film history.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to start right in by reading my essay.
Yes, please do.
And we'll see where it goes.
All right.
So after my own horrifying epiphany, horriphany, perhaps we could call it, came upon me.
Oh, that was good.
This essay came to me in a flash. I started it at like 8:30 at night, and I got done. I was sweating and crying, and I thought it must be past midnight, and it was 9:45.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
It had barely taken me an hour. All right, here we go. The premeditated murder of Luke Skywalker. For 7 months, I told myself that the way Luke Skywalker was portrayed in The Last Jedi was not entirely intentional. I tried to convince myself that there was something left of the hopeful, good-natured hero that we came to know and love in the original trilogy. I did not want to admit that every aspect of Luke Skywalker's hero's journey had been carefully, consciously, and systematically eviscerated. But I was wrong. It was as intentional as it was methodical. I was watching a video by Ethan Van Sciver on his Comic Artist Pro Secrets YouTube channel. He stated that the act of Luke tossing his lightsaber over his shoulder was symbolic of rejecting his masculinity, which is quite true, because swords are indeed phallic symbols, thus Luke's lightsaber represents his penis and his manhood. I did an actual facepalm when he said it, because I couldn't believe that I, of all people, Mr. Symbolism, at least in my own mind, had missed that. Second, because I realized the horrible truth that the tossing of the saber was just the opening salvo of the destruction of the character Luke Skywalker. My mind started racing, and the horrible truth of the alien titty milk scene penetrated my conscious awareness like a blast from the Death Star super laser. Casting away his father's lightsaber was denying his initiation into the Jedi. It was a denial of the Skywalker name and the heritage that comes with it. It was a post hoc refusal of the call he had accepted so many years ago. But that was just the opening salvo in the decimation of Luke Skywalker's hero's journey. I soon realized that all the elements of the hero's journey that George Lucas so carefully placed on the screen in 1977 were just as carefully canceled in 2017. Luke's life on Tatooine was generally symbolic of the devouring mother, with his aunt and uncle being specific manifestations of that archetype. The devouring mother attempts to geld the son so that he does not become independent of his mother. Don't grow, don't change, don't leave. The outside world is scary and dangerous. In one scene, Uncle Owen insists that Luke stay on the moisture farm while his Aunt Beru serves brightly colored milk in A New Hope. That is symbolic of Luke's emotional dependency on his surrogate parents. He has galactic dreams, but his boundaries are still no bigger than the moisture farm. He was physically a man, but still psychologically and spiritually a boy. But A New Hope is set at a portentous moment in the life and times of Luke Skywalker and the galaxy he inhabits. Thus it is that the episode's title is A New Hope. In a matter of hours, events unfold such that Luke cannot ever return again under the aegis of his aunt and uncle. Luke enters the liminal, or limbo, phase between adolescence and adulthood. The time for mother's milk is over, forever. And yet, somehow, 50 years later in the life of an alleged Jedi Master, we watch a grizzly-bearded Luke Skywalker drinking brightly colored milk from the teat of a grotesquely voluptuous alien. At the moment in the story when we were expecting to see Anakin's son come full circle as a master of the Force and a mentor for the student who is desperately seeking his counsel, Luke was instead drinking the food of babies. Food for weak, toothless, and maternally dependent infants who have not even the strength to walk. Now, Luke is also shown catching fish for food. Why would he need to drink milk if he has fish for food and protein? It doesn't taste good, judging by the grimace on his face. No, that shot of Luke swigging down the food of babies was for our subconscious minds. It was put in there to show, in no uncertain terms, that the story of Luke Skywalker we thought we knew was a lie. He was no hero, not a man, not a Jedi, not a Skywalker. He learned nothing from his training with Obi-Wan and Yoda. He did not grow from his defeats and victories. When he destroyed the Death Star, lost his hand, and finally faced his father and Palpatine, the two most powerful beings in the galaxy, with only his lightsaber and the goodness and purity of his heart. Tossing aside his lightsaber and instead grabbing a bottle when he should rightly have been the master and general, was the premeditated murder of Luke Skywalker in visual form. He threw away the weapon which enabled him to defeat the tyrannical father and went back to the cloying sweetness of the devouring mother. The rest of the time Luke spends on screen in The Last Jedi serves only to confirm that he is dead on arrival. He does not teach Rey any wisdom from his vast knowledge of the Force. Indeed, he has cut himself off from the Force, something that doesn't even seem possible, considering the Force is the very thing that binds all life together. He does not ignite his lightsaber even once in real time. He is utterly impotent, with a terminal case of lightsaber erectile dysfunction. The only vision of Grandmaster Luke with his lightsaber lit was during a hazy flashback wherein he intended to murder his nephew, the son of his sister and best friend. And when it appears for a brief moment that Luke has picked up again the hero's mantle, it turns out to be an illusion. As a final gut punch, we watch Luke Skywalker fade away under twin suns, as if he never took a single step of the hero's journey, and the original trilogy was but a barely remembered dream. I wept bitter tears of equal parts rage and grief when I wrote this. Luke Skywalker was the archetypal hero of the information age. The Last Jedi will not change this. I still say that Luke Skywalker is the archetypal hero of the information age. The narcissistic perversity of postmodernism, socialism, and feminism will not stamp out the eons-deep biological imperative for men to be the hero of their own story. Darth Kennedy and her Sith apprentice, Darth Ruin, will try to dismantle the hero's journey within the Star Wars franchise and our psyches, but they will do so as futilely as Palpatine tried to stamp out liberty in that long-ago, far-away galaxy. Now, The Force Awakens did have some Mary Sue moments with Rey, but for the most part, the mythical and archetypal hero's journeys were present, especially with the character Finn. But The Last Jedi was the first Star Wars movie which attempted to overtly reverse the archetypal hero's journey, and it immediately caused such shock, anger, and disgust that the next Star Wars movie was a complete flop. The fact that Kennedy and Johnson insulted and shamed the fan base for criticizing The Last Jedi didn't help matters. In their arrogance, they doubled down and put such obvious progressive panderings in Solo, such as a feminist robot, and Lando Calrissian, the pansexual pervert. Pandosexual, they call it now.
Pando Calrissian.
You Pando Calrissian, the pandosexual.
Oh.
But I definitely digress. The apparent victory over archetypal patriarchal hierarchies, which The Last Jedi was supposed to be, lasted but 6 months. With the utter financial failure of Solo, a Star Wars story, it became very clear who the real fan base of Star Wars is. People, mostly men, who want to see an archetypal hero's journey. Darth Kennedy and Darth Ruin indeed struck a great blow in our hearts and minds. So we, the fan base of Star Wars, struck back right where it hurts. The bottom line of the financial ledger at the Disney Corporation. I will never again pay to watch Disney-owned Star Wars, unless and until it drops the social justice agenda and once again tells me stories of heroes and villains, darkness and light, good and evil, masters and fools, victory and defeat. The stories of myself and my own psyche, the stories of my forefathers, and the stories of my children yet to be written. The mythology that has been refined and passed down over thousands, tens of thousands, and hundreds of thousands of years. Kathleen Kennedy has fallen prey to the bitter-root judgment writ large of feminism, that men must be put down in order for women to rise. Nothing is further from the truth, of course. Women only need to rise. Nothing more, and certainly nothing less. And in the meantime, tales of overpowered Mary Sues are still less compelling than watching grass grow. But there is nothing to learn from the wet dreams of feminists, except perhaps to confirm how psychotic they are. One thing they really got wrong is that mastery is not bought with birth, genitalia, or government programs. It is earned. Everyone knows this, though many are in denial. But denial or not, we all know deep inside that mastery is gained through discipline, alternating failure and success, and perseverance. That's why we can watch or listen to the same story over and over again with just the names and a few details change. Moses, David, Jesus, Odysseus, Beowulf, Superman, Batman, Anakin, and Luke. The proverbial hero with 1,000 faces. We only need to say their first names and their stories come unbidden from deep within our minds. Humans never tire of myths and legends because it's the essence of our best and most useful knowledge of ourselves and our world. Myths are the original form of psychology and probably still the most useful form. Lazy, uninspired, self-serving storytelling, even when combined with hundreds of millions of dollars of effects, production, and a full symphonic score, is still lazy, uninspired, and self-serving storytelling. Some people might balk at my hypothesized gelding instinct that I identify in women. However, it's just the corollary to the widely acknowledged dominance instinct in men, and the former instinct serves as a check and balance to the latter instinct. But if the domination instinct in men is attenuated too much, like we have in modern culture, the gelding instinct becomes too easily expressed and is destructive to families and culture instead of helping bind them together. I stand firm in my assertion that the gelding instinct is a primal subconscious motivation. Case in point, Kathleen Kennedy was put in charge of Star Wars. Let me say it again for emphasis. Kathleen Kennedy was put in charge of the Star Wars franchise, the biggest and most successful media franchise in recorded history. And what was her primary goal? To continue the legacy of George Lucas? Good storytelling, taking the franchise in an unexpected but intriguing direction. How about just making a crap load of money? Nope, 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 and nope. Her priority was to geld Luke Skywalker, the ultimate alpha male of the universe. And she was willing to do so at any cost. How could you not know that assassinating the most beloved character in modern history in order to promote modern progressive ideals would cost you dearly? I suppose the only way is if you are blinded by ideology such that you would not be able to see the obvious. Kennedy sat on her dark throne, chuckling at her own magnificence, while the rebellion planned its desperate but righteous attack. In what is perhaps the most meta phenomena I've ever witnessed, the Star Wars franchise itself has become the old archetypal story of David and Goliath, rebellion versus empire. Awesomely recursive. In 100 years, probably even 20, The Last Jedi will be a mere blip on the screen of the foolhardy attempt to wipe out masculinity and the hero's journey each boy must undertake to truly become a man. I look with my eyes and I feel with my soul at how Luke Skywalker was portrayed in The Last Jedi, and I can only conclude that this was an intentional character assassination of Luke specifically, and from a certain point of view, an attack on the hero archetype itself. How else would all the classic elements straight out of Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces be so thoroughly and emphatically reversed, canceled, and even shattered? I don't think this can happen without forethought and careful planning. At first, I hoped that Kennedy and Johnson were ignorant of the archetypes, myths, and texts that informed Lucas's Star Wars films, but I no longer believe that they were ignorant. They were defiant and oppositional to those things. Mastery is inborn. Just look at Rey. You don't need to attain mastery the old-fashioned way. It will just make you old, bitter, and homicidal. Look at Luke. And thus they stood in defiance of observable reality and the history of human narrative tradition. And they have just started to reap the consequences of such folly. More and worse consequences are sure to follow if they continue down the path of the dark side. For now, instead of Luke sucking on an alien titty, Kathleen Kennedy can suck on her failure. And suck my lightsaber while she's at it.
Dude, that is killer. I mean, seriously, that is so eloquent. It spearheads the issues. That's Pulitzer right there. I remember when you sent me it, it was like, yeah, I cried. I cried bitter tears because it brought it all back and put such a fine point to it.
It still gets me. It's been a few weeks since I wrote this.
Absolutely. It's loaded, man. It's loaded. And this is what's interesting about it is that most of the time fans of a film franchise will go along with an unexpected change. Most of the time. I think it's really interesting. It's the first time I've ever seen such a collective no way come from everybody that likes Star Wars. They say, no, we don't accept this. We don't accept what was done with Luke Skywalker. This is BS.
That's a great point. Star Wars fans are known for arguing over various things, but of course agreeing on one thing, that Star Wars is about the most awesome thing in the entire universe.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. This is the first time where a new element came in, something came in, and everybody hated it. You know, the prequels, so many people hate it. There are people that love it. I'm one of those.
Yeah. And
Not sorry.
These are people that love Star Wars. I mean, when you have people that live and breathe Star Wars refusing to go to another Disney-owned Star Wars movie, that's huge.
Oh, it is. The fans, the real fans, make it a point to support the franchise because we love it so much. And even, I mean, it's like a heroin addict that can't get much else other than some NyQuil or something. All right, well, I'll take what I can get.
A bitter substitute.
Right, and it's way better than nothing. That's how we feel about Star Wars.
Yeah, no, I'm on the same boat. I'm like, you know what? I'll just go buy the originals. I'll buy the prequels, and I'll just watch those until they get their act together because it's driving crazy to see. I mean, I can only imagine, but for my family, we lived and breathed Star Wars. That was like we watched Star Wars 3 or 4 times a week. We would start the trilogy over week after week and go from A New Hope to Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi, and start it all over again. We loved it, and I remember.
I knew there must be something good about your family.
You may have remembered this. You remember when Lucas released the special editions? Because I remember, oh my God. I remember when I was a kid, I would watch these movies on VHS, the top quality
Right.
of the time, Adjust the tracking, damn it.
Right.
And so I'd be watching that and I'd be like, man, I wish I could have seen this on the big screen. My dad would be talking about, like,
Yes.
I remember sneaking into the theater. I would pay for a ticket and I would just stay there until it started again. And he was talking about The Empire Strikes Back. He went to see it like 3 times in the same day.
Yes. A lot of people don't get this. Man, this is going to make me feel old. But
Too late.
you either saw things in the theater or you watched it on TV at home. There was no in between. People did not have 55-inch big screens for their 900 square foot apartment.
Hmm.
You had small TVs and you watched it either rebroadcast on TV with commercials and edited parts, or you watched it on VHS, which was grainy and sounded even worse than broadcast TV. I had never seen Star Wars on the big screen, maybe a slightly big-ish screen, but I'd never gone to a theater and seen Star Wars because my parents were way too cheap to take us to see Star Wars, and I was very young. Was born. I was a year old when the first one came out.
Right.
We went to the Dollar Drive-In, and that was what we did for movies.
Oh.
Boy, does that make me feel old. Better put my grandpa voice on now.
It's like, I remember back in the 1950s. It's like, you were at the theater? I was there, Sonny. Right in the middle of it.
Start having flashbacks from the war, the Second American Civil War.
Which ends up being all about Star Wars. Well, no, I mean...
Wow. It is. Let's get back on track. It totally is about Star Wars. Where were you going with the special edition point?
Oh, I was just saying, you look at people, I mean, we've talked about in our last episode when we covered in depth the effect of Star Wars on the American psyche back in the 1970s when it first came out. But it had not changed at all when the special editions came out. In fact, I would say another generation or two joined those people to go to the theater and see those special editions. And what was funny about it is that it wasn't enough. People had to go see it on the big screen. This is a movie they've probably seen 1,000 times. And they needed to be filled with it again.
Right, but rarely, if ever, had they sat down and watched it on a big screen in the theater the way George Lucas made it to be seen.
Exactly.
It was a big thing.
It was huge. It was huge.
Right. And many, many people hate it and to this day curse George Lucas's name just for the special editions. Not even the trilogies, just the special editions.
Oh, why? Perhaps that's another podcast. I don't know.
That is probably another podcast. Well, there were some stupid things about it. Some of the effects were meh. And I will say the Jabba the Hutt scene with Han Solo in episode 4 is super cool, like ultra mega cool, but shouldn't have gone back in.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't need to see it. It created this awesome mystery not to know even what a Jabba the Hutt was, let alone who he was. And it slows it down in a way because it doesn't make sense. If Jabba owes him so much money and he's so pissed off at him, why does he let him go? He just killed the bounty hunter that he sent to get him. I don't think he would be so forgiving.
That's true. Yeah, that did not make sense.
Maybe that's it, because it doesn't quite fit the Jabba the Hutt character.
And why did they make Greedo shoot first?
The gelding instinct. The gelding instinct, even George Lucas in his older age was getting gelded and getting into care-based morality. And the fifis of the young women's and the chillins, the fifis are the people who don't like hierarchies and want everything to just be handed to them. We can't see that you have to be a mean person sometimes in the world to survive. No, can't show that.
Yeah.
That ultimate masculine realization.
Yeah.
When you get that, you are a man, my son.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, I digress.
Yeah.
These are historic times for sure.
They are. Luke really, it was almost like they went back in time because I think the visuals were so strong. right? If they just hinted at some of the things, it would have been a partial reversal, but it was so strong. Throwing away his penis and going to suckle on his mom's teat and reattach the umbilical cord. That was really strong imagery.
Mm.
And so it was like a refusal to the call in the original time.
Right.
Like when Obi-Wan came to him in episode 4, it was like all that was reversed because the strength of the original was overpowered by the regelding, and it was just so shocking. And so then you have to go, oh well, he didn't have the hero's journey. He didn't have the call to adventure. He didn't have the supernatural aid come help him. He didn't cross the first threshold. He didn't have the road of trials and atonement with the Father. And then your mind goes, there's no atonement with the Father. Well, what was the whole damn fucking theme of Star Wars? Atonement with the Father.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all got wiped out in 5 minutes. It was
Yeah.
wiped out at a subconscious level. Like we saw it right happen, but then we're still, okay, well, he's still Luke Skywalker and he still looks like it has a lightsaber. But in our subconscious mind, it's just bubbling up. He's dead. It's gone. Everything I thought I knew about him was totally gone. And like I said, it took me months to really piece this together and realize it was intentional.
It absolutely was. It felt. I remember when we went to see The Last Jedi, and that very first scene where it shows Rey hand him the lightsaber, and then he just kind of, without hesitation, he just tosses it over his shoulder. And I remember it physically hurt me. I remember it. My
Totally.
heart hurt.
Mm-hmm.
There were many layers to the hurt because first it was just like utter shock. It's like, oh,
Right.
I wasn't expecting that, but it was almost like the entire movie that was to be The Last Jedi rested on how that one scene was handled. And as soon as he tossed it over his shoulder, it's like the whole damn movie went with it.
Wow, that is it.
When I read your epiphany that you had, and you sent me a copy and I read it, so I did a little bit of research too. It made me think about the caretakers on that damn planet where Luke was in The Last Jedi. So I looked into it, and straight from Darth Ruin himself, Rian Johnson in an interview was saying, yeah, we wanted to put Luke Skywalker on a planet with a bunch of alien nun women creatures. And so they're the ones that care for the Jedi, which is strange because I didn't see them doing anything by way of caring for Luke Skywalker except looking at him like he was a gigantic pain in their ass. And then
it's the passive aggressive devouring mother.
Exactly. Always disapproving. And Darth Ruin specifically said, wanted them to always disapprove of Rey and always glare at her and always, it's just like, I'm like, oh my gosh, there are a whole bunch of, he escaped the devouring mother in episode 4 when he left Tatooine, and then he went back to a planet that had thousands of them.
Right.
It was such a return.
It was just a complete invalidation of everything that happened in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
If there's one thing that the devouring mother hates worse than a boy who's with her, it's the boy leaving for a pretty girl.
Or even the presence of a pretty girl, in the vicinity, And
Right.
I always thought that was kind of strange because the caretakers, they never interacted with Luke in the movie, ever. Save for a few times when they glared at him. But if you notice, when Rey was around, they were always glaring at her. So I thought that was really weird. I'm like, they're not taking care of Luke. They're not interacting with Luke, but they hate on Rey because, there's a girl. And they responded perfectly to the devouring mother archetype. And that was intentional.
God, that is such a gelding for, the ultimate man, right? He's the realized man.
Mm-hmm. The universal man.
And he comes back as that. And he chooses to go get gelded again by a mother that isn't even nurturing and attractive.
Yeah.
Because, the idea is that we'll go back to paradise, right? That's the Freudian thing. If we can get back to mother, we'll get back to paradise.
Right.
But it's not even paradise for him. And he knows it. And he just stays there. That's like the ultimate here, just geld me and get it over with.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most pathetic defeat I've ever witnessed in my life.
It was.
It's going to become the archetypal defeat of modern myth.
Yeah, the most epic
Holy
failure.
crap.
I mean,
Oh,
to go and throw away your destiny for a neglectful, devouring mother, uh,
dude,
a whole
dude,
convent of them.
you said throw away your destiny. I'm looking at the sentence right now on Campbell's book. Not everyone has a destiny. Only the hero who has plunged to touch it and has come up again with a ring.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's it's gonna make me cry again. But
God,
wow. We can have another podcast episode just on that phrase alone. So
totally. God, I'm floored at the emotions I'm feeling around this.
yeah.
Honestly, it floors me. But it's the power of the archetypes. I had some experiences the last week, we'll just say, and I realized like touching the archetypes just once in your life can change your entire life.
Hmm.
It can change who you are in a moment.
Yep.
And that's what Star Wars did for people. It's what Luke Skywalker did for people. It put it on the screen with special effects and light and Ben Burt's audio and John Williams' score. Oh my God.
Yeah. And Kathleen Kennedy knew this too.
Yeah,
And that was the first thing that she rushed to take out.
absolutely. Well, I'm just going to go there on this tangent. It really shows the bitterness and the misunderstanding that progressive feminists have, the super modern feminist of I can be whatever I want in the moment and demand what I want from everyone and be a complete narcissist, be a complete vampire, break every law while demanding that everyone else around me follow the law to a letter. And that's what makes me good.
Mm. Yep.
What? I don't think so, sister. And she's paying the price for it. It's like even nerds have a line. And that line
Even
is Luke
nerds have a line.
Skywalker. And they're going to battle. This is archetypal. They're going to battle, the reluctant soldier archetype who realizes he has no choice but to go risk death and fight for what he believes in or be a slave.
And that's where Kathleen Kennedy, well, one of many points where she erred, is that she thought that she could just put down this in her arrogance. She thought she could just put down the fans and they would just go, limping back to their proverbial mother's basements and accept the crap that she produced and pay money to go see it and to pay money to consume it.
Yeah, she thought we'd still go to the box office. Hell no. She thought we were going to buy Rose Tico action figures.
With karate chop action.
Did you see?
They made an action figure of her? Oh my God.
Yeah, even calling it an action figure is like an oxymoron liable to start a singularity. So intense. God. But did you see the videos, multiple videos of people going into the last days of Toys R Us being open, like marked down 60%, 80%. The shelves were still filled with Rose Tico dolls at 80 and 90% off.
No one bought it. No one bought it.
I bet if you look at the stats, not a single Rose Tico doll was bought in the entire history of the universe. Ever, anywhere, on any timeline.
They pushed her hard. I mean, they really did.
Mm-hmm.
They thought they were looking at the new face of Star Wars because, I mean, before I remember being at the bookstore, just a week or two before the Last Jedi released. At least I think it was before. It was either right at the release, like it was simultaneous, or slightly before. But they had already
Right?
come out with a line of novels about Rose Tico and a special squadron. I do emphasize the word special.
Oh, God.
They really did. They pushed her hard. I didn't understand, especially after I watched the movie, and I'm like, there is nothing interesting about this character. In fact,
Oh,
this character does nothing the entire course of the film. Uh, she,
the few thing, yeah, the few things she almost does turn out to be completely ineffectual and don't matter.
yep. I mean, she prevented Finn from Mercy killing himself
Totally.
because
Be- better, better to die the sacrificial hero than live as a geld.
to live with Rose Tico.
That's what I said. To live as a geld.
Yep,
To
absolutely. I mean,
live as a gelding. Ugh.
yeah, it was a mess. It just didn't make any sense. It was such an unlikely path too. I mean,
Ugh.
she
Gosh.
was. I can't even go there. I don't have the strength.
Please, it's,
we'll
please,
have
it's
we'll
probably
have another
best.
podcast on Rose Tico at another time. We'll follow up, but not tonight, man.
Yeah, not tonight. Um, let's see. Just thinking of the elements of the hero's journey that got reversed. It's like Luke went back to the devouring mother's womb, really, and reattached the umbilical cord.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what it was. I mean, they were very they were very careful to establish that.
Right, because Star Wars was really, he left the mother pretty quickly. That wasn't so much his journey as it was going back to the atonement with the father, and to have his ending be so feminine, archetypally speaking, really creepy. I mean, like he's the universal man, and to have
Mhm.
his ending like that, like the I was so troubled that I honestly have not been able to go in and think about this deeply, this particular thing. I don't know why. My subconscious is probably blocking it. When he died, faded away under the twin suns that look just like Tatooine. I when I try to bring that up in my mind and meditate on it, my brain screams, no, no, no.
Oh wow.
I don't even I don't even know what's in there, but just it's like he never moved from one place to the next.
He never left. I mean, they 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 were so many.
And that's
eh,
so feminine archetype of the dead earth, right? He
right. Which is also too funny too because we were talking today about the symbology of water.
right,
He's on a planet that's like he's on an island that is like surrounded by water.
right.
And so it's like
And said island has a big uh yonic vagina in it. You know.
yeah. Oh man, the last hurt was when Luke died or appeared to die or whatever. They weren't on Tatooine, man. They weren't on Tatooine, but yet they wanted him to see the two suns. They wanted to be like,
Right?
okay, this is the grand opus, you know, the magnum opus, the ending. Like he never even left Tatooine, ladies and gentlemen.
Dude, and not only that, he he regressed into the feminine of Tatooine. Here's where I go with this. Tatooine at least had some male had some male archetypal patterns in it. It was hot,
Mhm.
dry, it was bright, very young. There was men on the planet. Men like Han Solo and Obi-Wan Kenobi inhabited that planet.
Yep.
At least were part of it. But look where the twin suns at the end. What was it? What island was he on? I don't even remember. But it was watery. It was dark. It was inhabited only by women, and I include Luke Skywalker in that.
Yep.
Not only did he not even leave the somewhat masculine Tatooine, he went in back into the womb. That's what it was. Because I kept wondering, where's the symbology of him actually going back into the womb? What does a baby grow in for 9 months? Inside the water sack.
Yep.
He literally went back into the water sack.
Oh God. So he did.
Wow.
Oh
And that
wow.
little island was like the umbilical cord, right? Because oh my God, that's exactly right. Because the umbilical cord is the physical thing which gives you life inside the water, right? Does the
Hmm.
oxygen inside the water. And
That's
that's
why
what
they
Alan
had him
did.
fishing. That's why they had him fish, even though it made no sense. He could subsist on that milk crap, but that's why he was fishing because they were really driving it home. that the umbilical was giving him everything he needed.
Yep. And
Oh.
so horrible. Well, because the umbilical cord is archetypal of being stuck in the in the liminal phase,
Hmm.
because it nourishes you, in between birth and whatever pre-birth is. We don't even know. The moment birth starts, the umbilical cord, which gave you life, is the most deadly object in your world.
Yep, it can kill you.
Right, because it can wrap around your neck. Like, and that is so symbolic of hero's journeys. Like, the moment your journey starts, right, and you get the initiation, you get the call, that which gave you life in the old you will bring you death in the new. That's what you got to let go of.
Yep, the man's first death, as they say.
Yes, yes. I was writing some notes for our next podcast. Birth, the first death.
I mean, it's such a wonderful paradox. The birth, the first death, the first death, you have to die in order to live. I
Right,
mean, it's so wonderfully paradoxical, but it makes perfect sense.
right. That's the beauty of the archetypes.
Yep.
Oh, goodness.
Well, that was truly diabolical.
I think that was pretty amazing. Any final thoughts?
Um, Gosh, I think we covered it. I mean, definitely, I hadn't thought about it until we had discussed it just now about he
Wow,
designed them that way.
that image you just created of the tiny stillborn fetus Luke fading away in his mother's womb, never to be born.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that scene was.
Jesus. Oh.
I'm going to have to go to therapy for this.
Yeah. But that's probably a good sign.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Archetypal Man Podcast. And if you made it all the way through this, you are truly an Archetypal Man, not to mention a Star Wars nerd. Coming soon is our next episode where we talk about something other than Star Wars. There is more to life than Star Wars. Can't really think of exactly what that would be in this moment. Just kidding. Our next episode is about ritual initiations and the lack thereof in modern culture, and the very detrimental effects it has on men, women, boys, and girls. It's a barn burner for sure. You don't want to miss it. We'll be posting a link below as soon as it's up. If you liked this episode, please hit that like button. If you like our content in general, hit the subscribe button, and then don't forget to press the bell to be actually notified, because YouTube is stupid, and even if you subscribe, they won't actually notify you unless you press the bell. So, thanks for listening. Have a great archetypal day.